Brookland News Live begins right now. Here's Mitchell.
And hello everyone, welcome live here into Brookland News Live. I'm Jackson Mitchell. It is Thursday, December 18th. It is so good to be with you. We are following a number of headlines. Let's start going out live because Luigi Mangione, he's back in court today as his pre-trial hearings continue. Remember, last Friday, his hearings were canceled because he was sick. Let's take you out live to that feed. We're getting in from New York City. There's a look at that microphone there. His lawyers actually spoke just a moment ago. It looks like we're actually having some trouble with that feed. So why don't we go to his lawyer speaking a few moments ago.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, we want to thank everyone for coming and for sitting through a 3-week mini trial that should have been a half a day. MAP hearings and Huntley hearings to suppress statements and evidence usually take a half a day, maybe a day. We were told this was going to be several days, but this went on for 3 weeks unnecessarily, and lots of witnesses were called. And in fact, today, we were fully expecting the case detective, Detective Diaz, to testify. And it was only after Lieutenant Leonardi testified about the illegal wiretap of Mr. Mangione in Altoona, Pennsylvania, that they withdrew statement notice, and now suddenly we're not going to have the lead case detective in this case. It's significant. There was a lot of open questions that we wanted to question him about, especially the very prejudicial statement made by the chief of detectives at the time there was a press conference a year ago where they were talking about all the probable cause and the reasons they had to believe that Mr. Mangione committed this crime. And one of those things was that they relied on a statement made by his mother that she said she could see him doing something like this. That's an absolutely false statement. That was never said. And in fact, we asked for discovery regarding that. The prosecution told us they gave us all the discovery. We've even subpoenaed materials from San Francisco Police Department. There is no such statement. It was never made. In fact, it was the opposite. What Mrs. Mangione said was that she could never see her son being a risk to himself or others. And we put that on the record again today, and that still has not been corrected by either the NYPD or the Manhattan DA's office. That's a prejudicial statement that has been repeated many, many times. And yes, I'm repeating it here, but because you all have published this over and over and over again, because this was an essential piece of information that Detective Kenny said was relied upon by the NYPD in this case. So we want the NYPD or the San Francisco PD or the Manhattan DA to correct this very prejudicial statement that was never said. So thank you very much for coming.
Why did this Mrs. Mangione about that?
So thank you so much for coming, and we appreciate it all, and we'll see you again soon.
Why did this pretrial last so long?
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thanks, everybody.
And we hope,
Hi, everyone.
We hope Christmas music wasn't ruined for everyone forever.
For the rest of time.
For the rest
or McDonald's.
of time. So.
You'll be home for Christmas.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. A little bit of a presser just held there. They didn't take any questions, rather addressing the fact that this hearing said what she said there. She said she thought it went on for too long. That was just moments ago in New York City. The lawyers there for Luigi Mangione speaking. If you remember, he had that key retrial hearings going on because they were asking if certain evidence could be allowed, if the jury could see certain things, because they believed when he was found at McDonald's, his backpack was searched and they didn't have a warrant for that, and he was questioned and different things of that, just what the law was, what police say, what we're now learning. So again, as the pretrial hearings continue, just saw the lawyers there speaking for just a moment. I want to take you out live to Washington, D.C. right now because we are standing by for Dr. Mehmet Oz and Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. to speak there, make some remarks. When they do, we will take you there live. In the meantime, moments ago in New York City, Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani spoke. Let's listen in.
City Hall. The director of the Office of Management and Budget might not be a name that every New Yorker can immediately recite, but it is someone who has the power to shape nearly every aspect of the city we call home. The ability to influence the course of our shared future like few others in government. The OMB director oversees our budgets, leads financial planning and policy making, and will support me in maintaining both the short and long-term health of our city. While that may sound abstract, it will be felt in ways that are anything but. When a child walks into school and is greeted by a teacher who is paid a salary that means they can afford to live in the city, a school that is well-resourced, that is the mark of an OMB director hard at work. When a group of friends see the sun is shining and go to a nearby public park because it is clean of trash and the lawns are green with grass, that is the mark of an OMB director investing in public services. And it will be felt when a child can grow up here in Pamanok houses and rise all the way to serve as OMB director because NYCHA tenants have received the investments and the resources that they deserve. I am very proud to announce today that Sharif Suleiman will serve as the next director of the Office of Management and Budget. As New Yorkers learn more about him, I know they will share my excitement. Sharif is a son of New York, a child of immigrants like me. He was born in our city, grew up here in Pamanok houses, and has raised his two beautiful children in New York with his wife, Hanan. He boasts a record of transformative leadership that has measurably improved the lives of New Yorkers. It will allow him to begin delivering from City Hall from day one. And as the Senior Vice Chancellor and Chief Financial Officer at CUNY for the past 2 years, he has managed a multi-billion-dollar budget, reduced the structural deficit by nearly 80% in 2 years, and has deep competence navigating the political complexities of budget management. City Hall will feel familiar for Sharif. He has not only held senior roles in city government across the past 3 mayoral administrations, he served as the commissioner of the Department of Finance and has led high-level negotiations on New York City's behalf. But more meaningful to me than any breadth or depth of past experience is the alignment we share on what matters most, a commitment to transforming our city into one where every New Yorker can afford a life of dignity. Budgets are nothing if not a reflection of political choices and political will. And together, I am eager to make different decisions and to enact an agenda that puts first the many, not just the privileged few. I know that this is work that Sharif is not only uniquely qualified to perform, but deeply eager to lead. And I am grateful to him for returning to serving this city. Please join me in welcoming New York's next director of the Office of Management and Budget, Sharif Suleiman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor-elect, for the opportunity to serve in your administration as the next budget director of the City of New York. And thank you for the ornaments here on this Christmas tree of my childhood here at Pamanok Houses, which will no doubt be a meme later today. Thank you for that. But I am humbled by the trust you have placed in me to take on this important role and to work alongside you in the stellar team you have assembled to deliver on the affordability agenda. And speaking of that team, I'd like to thank incoming First Deputy Mayor Dean Foulahan for being a mentor and a friend, and incoming Chief of Staff Elle Biscard Church for her leadership and confidence in me to deliver for New Yorkers. I'd be remiss if I did not also thank my current employer, the City University of New York, an invaluable institution and affordable engine of upward social mobility. I want to thank the chair of the board, Bill Thompson, Chancellor Felix Matos Rodriguez, and the Chief Operating Officer, Hector Batista, who is here with us today. Thank you, Hector, for everything. Thank you for the opportunity to manage CUNY's finances. It's been said that public service is a privilege. Well, I have been lucky enough to enjoy that privilege for nearly 30 years in various roles in the state and the city of New York. And I am honored to continue to serve in what will be my 4th mayoral administration. I can honestly say that I am as excited today as I was 28 years ago about the opportunity to deliver meaningful change through public service. Budgets are more than just numbers on a spreadsheet, lines on a graph, or statistics on a chart. They're about priorities. They're about hopes and dreams of New Yorkers for a more affordable city. They're about innovation and excellence in government. They're about ensuring quality service delivery for New Yorkers. We will be intentional about smart and effective budgeting that delivers on the needs of New Yorkers while being responsible stewards of the public fisc. We are clear-eyed about the challenges that lie ahead, and we are excited about the opportunities to tackle an affordability crisis that has persisted and has strained household budgets for far too long. To be sure, we will need help to get there, and I look forward to joining ongoing conversations with our governmental partners on how to achieve the affordability agenda together in common purpose. On a personal note, as a first-generation Egyptian Muslim American who was born and raised in New York, I cannot help but feel a profound sense of pride for the chance to join the administration of the first Muslim mayor of the city of New York. My parents emigrated here to the U.S. from Egypt over 5 decades ago. Like many immigrants, they made ends meet through a collection of jobs. But my father, who's here with us today, he ultimately found his way to a career in public service in the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. And it was while he was at DOHMH that he instilled in me the nobility of public service. And I am glad again that he's here with us today to usher in the next chapter in this historic time in our city's leadership. So thank you, Dad. And finally, to my family who are also here with us today, to my wife, Hanan, Hayati. I hope it's okay if I borrowed that line. Okay. Thank you for your love, support, and endless sacrifices when plans were upended because I needed to stay in Albany another week, or I had to tend to some governmental crisis during COVID. To my children, Lena and Ziad, thank you for being 2 amazing kiddos and for translating the Gen Alpha world for us. And to their teta, their grandma, Layla, thank you for being a pillar of strength for our family. So once again, thank you, Mayor-elect. I'm very excited to roll up my sleeves and get to work. Thank you.
Alrighty, that was moments ago in New York City. We are going to take you now because we expect some remarks to come very soon from Dr. Mehmet Oz in Washington, D.C. There's that camera. We just saw them appear. Then they went off our screen now, so we expect those remarks now to come at any moment. Let's turn the audio up here. Okay, we're just hearing some music, so we're waiting for that to begin. It's expected to be on children's health and medical intervention, so we'll be waiting for that to begin. I want to take you to Van Horn, Texas quickly here as we have just a second. They are expected to announce, looks like T-minus 10 minutes, that's on hold though, a Blue Origin space expected to launch its first ever wheelchair user into space. We'll be watching for that when it comes a little later. In the meantime though, Dr. RFK Jr. Mehmet Oz making this announcement on health, children's health. Let's go live there and listen in.
Welcome and thank you for being here today for our big announcements. We have many speakers today, and then we'll be taking questions from members of the press. It is my pleasure to welcome to the podium HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you to all the officials who are joining us today, and I'm going to acknowledge many of you by name. It's a long list. Chairman of the Federal Trade Commission, Andrew Ferguson, Senator Bill Cassidy, Senator Marsha Blackburn, Senator Roger Marshall, Senator James Lankford, Congressman Doug LaMalfa, Congressman John Joyce, Congresswoman Diana Harshberger, Congressman Bob Onder, Congressman Robert Adderholt, Congressman Dan Crenshaw, Congressman Tim Walberg, Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, Deputy Secretary Jim O'Neill, Administrator Mehmet Oz, Director Jay Bhattacharya, Commissioner Marty McCary, and Admiral Brian Christine. And a special thanks to Chloe Cole for being with us today. To bravely share her odyssey. Doctors assume a solemn obligation to protect children. Yet doctors across the country now provide needless and irreversible sex-rejecting procedures that violate their sacred Hippocratic oath by endangering the very lives that they are sworn to safeguard. The American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, peddled the lie that chemical and surgical sex-rejecting procedures could be good for children who suffer from gender dysphoria. They betrayed the estimated 300,000 American youth ages 13 to 17, conditioned to believe that sex can be changed. They betrayed their Hippocratic oath to do no harm. So-called gender-affirming care has inflicted lasting physical and psychological damage on vulnerable young people. This is not medicine, it is malpractice. We're done with junk science driven by ideological pursuits, not the well-being of children. A peer-reviewed report published by the HHS Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health last month confirms that sex-rejecting procedures impose medical dangers and lasting harm on children who receive these interventions. So today we are taking 6 decisive actions, guided by gold standard science and the week 1 executive order from President Trump to protect children from chemical and surgical mutilation. This morning I signed a declaration: sex-rejecting procedures are neither safe nor effective treatment for children with gender dysphoria. These procedures fail to meet professionally recognized standards of care. Medical professionals or entities providing sex-rejecting procedures to children are out of compliance with these standards of health care. This declaration is a clear directive to providers to follow the science and the overwhelming body of evidence that these procedures hurt, not help, children. Additionally, CMS is proposing 2 new rules. The first rule will bar hospitals that participate in Medicare and Medicaid, which is almost every hospital, from performing these dangerous and harmful procedures. The second rule prohibits the federal Medicaid dollars from funding the sex-rejecting procedures on minors. The FDA is issuing warning letters to 12 manufacturers of breast binders, which are medical devices used for purposes such as assistance in recovery from cancer-related mastectomies. The FDA is telling these companies that the illegal marketing of breast binders to children for the purpose of treating gender dysphoria commits significant regulatory violations and requires swift congressional or corrective action. If the manufacturers don't comply, they could face enforcement actions, including product seizures. Furthermore, HHS is also moving to reverse the Biden administration's attempt to include gender dysphoria within the definition of disability. My uncle, Ted Kennedy, was the primary author of the Americans with Disabilities Act and of the 1978 amendments that strengthened the Rehabilitation Act. The Biden-era amendments that designated gender dysphoria as a disability serve the commercial interest of a predatory, multi-billion-dollar industry that betrayed the original intention of those laws, engendered widespread public resentments against those laws among the American people, and discredited the statutes in the public mind. These are statutes that were designed to protect the most vulnerable Americans, and the misuse of these statutes for these purposes injures the statutes themselves and injures other people who are entitled to that protection and who Americans want to see protected. Our proposed rule will reassure recipients of HHS funding that policies preventing or limiting sex-rejecting procedures do not violate disability non-discrimination requirements. Finally, our Assistant Secretary of Health, Admiral Brian Christine, today signed a public health message to inform healthcare providers, families, and policymakers that current evidence does not support claims that puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries are safe and effective treatments for pediatric gender dysphoria. These announcements are grounded in evidence and shaped by compassion. President Trump has made child protection a national priority. The Make Our Children Healthy Again strategy demonstrates that commitment. Sex-rejecting procedures rob children of their futures. The Maha Commission strategy report calls for an end to over-medicalization of our children. Unnecessary medical interventions drive big money interests that push sex-rejecting treatments. Today's revenue for sex-rejecting drugs and surgeries in 2023 were estimated in one study to exceed $4.4 billion and on track to exceed $7.8 billion by 2030. One doctor was recorded callously describing sex-rejecting procedures as a big moneymaker. Hospitals rake in millions of dollars by convincing boys and girls that a lifetime of off-label prescriptions for estrogen and testosterone blockers, chest reconstruction surgeries, and more are the only way to achieve true happiness and belonging in life. It's wrong. The Trump administration will not stand by while ideology, misinformation, and propaganda push vulnerable young people into decisions they cannot fully understand and that they can never reverse. On my watch, HHS will stand for radical transparency and informed consent. We follow the evidence, we employ gold standard science, we honor the moral obligation to do no harm. There is divine worth in every person, and it shines most brightly in our children. That worth commands us to protect them. And as long as I serve as HHS Secretary, this agency will do so. Thank you all very, very much.
Sorry, I thought I was last. I guess I'm not. Secretary Kennedy, thank you very much. His bold words tonight reflect a deep passion that he's expressed since very early in this administration, and it represents why HHS needs to be in the forefront of issues like this. The white paper that was crafted, it's several hundred pages long, but is actually a superb document, created a foundation for CMS, my agency, Medicare and Medicaid, to take bold action as well to address some of the challenges. But I want to take a second and outline where we are right now. There's an op-ed that Steph Carlton, my chief of staff, was over here somewhere, and I penned that just issued while we've been sitting here, and it highlights some of these issues. But of course, it all came out of the executive order of the president, protecting children from chemical and surgical mutilation. Simple title, descriptive and accurate in its desire to do just that. And today we will deliver that to the president and to the secretary. Many of you, as you walked through the front portal of this building, the Hubert Humphrey building, saw Senator Humphrey's quote on the side wall. And he speaks about the moral obligation of government to take care of those at the dawn of life, our children. 53% of children in America are in Medicaid or CHIP programs. So we provide insurance to most children, and commercial insurance follow us. But we are in a weird place in America where we have mixed politics and medicine. And you know what you get when you mix politics and medicine? Politics. There is no medicine left. We witnessed that with bizarre statements, predatory actions, and many other activities that I think have forced children to the tip of the spear where they have brunt the burden of this toxic combination. We've been told that permanently altering bodies of children, and the children are told this as well, will bring them lasting peace. But few have achieved the inner peace promised by these charlatans, and the talking heads, the media personalities, the social media posts, all these have created a dishonest narrative. And of course, many of these children are left with the most tragic parts of all the treatments that they've succumbed themselves to. Many physicians as well have been pressured into compliance. The white paper outlines this, with the dangerous progressive ideology that treats children like lab mice. And because often in medical school you're taught to go along to get along, they have not been willing to rear their heads and bravely say what they know to be right, which is that these procedures are wrong. Individuals who question their sexuality are treated by medical professionals on the fast track, that's what it's called, approach to care, resulting in drastic interventions that merely increase the distress they're already suffering from. Under politicized medicine, people suffer long-term consequences. Let me go through the three major categories. Puberty blockers, reduce bone density, alter brain development, which is a real problem when you're 11, 12, 13 years of age, and disrupt sexual function for the rest of your life, oftentimes. Cross-sex hormones cause irreversible changes, including infertility, loss of sexual function, even cardiovascular issues, as well as long-term endocrine problems. And of course, the surgical interventions where you remove healthy organs, despicable and reprehensible as it is, permanently alter appearances and destroy children's lives. So let's talk a moment right now about the big question. This dangerous fast-track approach in invasive treatment, what it really does is slap a Band-Aid on a much deeper pathology, a much deeper problem, the underlying issue of gender dysphoria. It denies patients the opportunity to be seen for who they really are. The doctor can't look them in the eyes and treat them like a child that's confused and lost and needs help. They become an opportunity. They become eventually a victim. Reasonable evidence-based objections that a child's confusion might resolve over time have been ignored, even though it makes common sense, and it turns out from numerous studies now in Europe to be true. Again, we outlined these in the op-ed. And this is not how clinicians respond to the care of other pediatric issues, but it's how we respond to pediatric adolescent mental distress. And the medically honest approach is to at least start slowly, the least invasive possible, psychotherapy, counseling, including family counseling, evaluation of other conditions like ADHD and autism, and of course treatment of the anxiety and depression that so often is included with this diagnosis. There's lots of reasons we're having this problem. Social media is obviously a concern. There's been an explosion of discussions within children's groups about these topics. The surge has also been accompanied by healthcare professionals advocating that there's not going to be any opportunity to push a child to think twice about the decision they might have wandered into mistakenly in a whimsical moment. And 57% increase in suicide rates over the last great data we have, which is from the teens, is also a concern, with teenage children bearing the brunt of this. American taxpayers should not have to foot the bill for ideologically driven experiments on our nation's youth, and hospitals that we deem must meet the minimum quality standards of care and safety should not be conducting these experiments when we know so little about what is happening with our youth. Now the important part. For these reasons, and I can go on and on, this document, the white paper that the Secretary commissioned is over 300 pages long, we're taking major steps at CMS to stop a funding process that has led to irreversible medical interventions with two major actions. The first, we're announcing a notice of proposed rulemaking that ends taxpayer funding of sex-rejecting procedures for children in Medicaid and CHIP, full stop. We don't provide health care to every child, but at 53%, we've got most, and we're not going to let taxpayer money go to hurt these children, and those children will no longer be hurt with this ideology. We know that inflicting these procedures on young people costs them and the Medicaid system countless dollars, not just in medical bills, but also all kinds of downstream issues, while providers reap the rewards. Too many providers inappropriately profit from carrying out these destructive procedures, and I'm just going to go through this grotesque laundry list of prices just so you're on the same page with what Secretary Kennedy started teasing at. According to a 2022 JAMA data, so it's very recent, the typical vaginoplasty, a procedure a child does not need, costs $60,000. Shockingly, a phalloplasty, the creation of a penis, costs, on average, in America, according to this data, high quality, $150,000 per child. I do believe, with doing some work, that these prices have continued to increase with increasing manufactured demand. And I must point out that the creation of a vagina, in that case of a phalloplasty, or a scrotoplasty where you add testicles, that's extra. This is a pathology that has afflicted the medical profession. It is shameful that clinicians have profiteered off this. I do not understand how it could possibly have been tolerated by the leadership of these institutions, but it will no longer be funded. And I can tell you, if they're so diehard desirous of helping children and they don't get paid, the question is, will they do these procedures? And I think we know the answer. The second big thing, that's $250 million over the next decade of savings to the taxpayer, but that's irrelevant to this issue compared to the harm to the next generation, to our future, because kids are always our future. Second, to reinforce the need to protect our children, we are announcing that certified Medicare and Medicaid hospitals, pretty much everyone in the hospital in the country, will no longer be permitted to perform certain sex-rejecting procedures on children. Any hospital that does offer sex-rejecting procedures to vulnerable populations of pediatric-age kids will no longer be able to participate in the Medicare and Medicaid program. We want our hospitals returning to healing, not harming the patients entrusted with their care, or they're going to pay a very steep price. These actions are part of an all-government effort led by President Trump and spearheaded by Secretary Kennedy to protect vulnerable individuals and genuinely make America healthy again. This is not just smart, science-based health policy. It is our moral duty, as Senator Humphrey mentioned 50 years ago. I'm passionate about this issue. My whole team is passionate about this issue. Secretary Kennedy, God bless you for pushing forward on this.
Thank you, Dr. Oz. One of the most barbaric features of a society is the genital mutilation of its children. It's based on a medical dogma, sadly, that the normal, sometimes stressful experiences of boys and girls growing up is a pathology that requires medical intervention. Parents are told if they don't agree to these disfiguring and permanently sterilizing procedures, they're putting their child at increased risk of suicide, a baseless claim that has never been supported with good data. Let's be honest, and I'm going to say what you're not supposed to say. Pushing transgender ideology in children is predatory, it's wrong, and it needs to stop. This ideology is a belief system that some teachers, some pediatricians, and others are selling to children without their parents knowing sometimes, or with a deliberate attempt to remove parents from the decision-making. Puberty can be stressful, and for all of history, being a kid and interacting with kids from the opposite gender can be awkward, even confusing at times. But to see now a society putting kids on a path of chest binders, drugs, castration, mastectomies, and other procedures is a path that now many kids regret. And Chloe, I've got to say, your testimony in front of the Hill was one of the best descriptions I've heard on this issue ever. Maybe one of the best descriptions I've heard of any topic ever presented in front of Congress, and it's an honor to be here with you. Let me be clear about something, and this is an important distinction. Sometimes it doesn't get mentioned. We're not talking about medically treating kids with a biological basis for differences in sexual development, what used to be called intersex. We're not talking about children with 5-alpha reductase deficiency, Klinefelter syndrome, Turner syndrome, or other sex chromosome abnormalities. We're talking about an ideology that is supported by flawed science that every child as young as 4 years of age should pick from an array of genders. We've got high schools now where half the kids don't identify as a boy or girl. What's going on? To American hospitals and clinics, do not ask parents to leave the room in order to sell your transgender ideology to America's children. How is it that a child cannot get an ibuprofen without their parents' consent at school? Yet states like California are arguing that children should be able to make irreversible choices without their parents' knowledge. The UK actually did a comprehensive review in the Cass Commission of the medical literature and found there's no role for puberty blockers in many of these interventions. We as doctors have a duty to speak up, and that's why we're here, against this cruel practice. It's been hard to speak honestly on this topic. Many in academia who have challenged the dogma have been railroaded, dismissed, fired, or labeled in a form of modern-day McCarthyism. Just ask the former Brown University professor Lisa Lippman, whose research suggested that transgenderism was a socially contagious condition. Brown University persecuted her and did not renew her contract. And this is the story of many academics that are trying to speak common sense to this insanity. Let's stop with the labeling and let's have an honest conversation about what's best for America's children. Today, the FDA is taking action. We are sending warning letters to 12 manufacturers and retailers for illegal marketing of breast binders for children for the purposes of treating gender dysphoria. Breast binders are a Class 1 medical device with legitimate medical users, such as being used by women after breast cancer surgery. And these binders are not benign. Long-term usage has been associated with pain, compromised lung function from atelectasis collapse, and even difficulty breastfeeding later in life. The warning letters will formally notify the companies of their significant regulatory violations and require prompt corrective action. And I want to say thank you, President Trump, for signing the executive order to have us look into this. Thank you to Secretary Kennedy for speaking directly to this issue, to Mehmet Oz for finally ending government-funded sex transition procedures in the United States, to Jim O'Neill for his leadership, Brian Christine, Jay Bhattacharya, to Chloe for sharing her personal experience, to the entire team, to the many members here, Senators Marshall, Cassidy, Langford, Blackburn. You've taken risk and stood up on this topic and stood for what's right. Congressman Wahlberg, Anders, Adderholt, Harshberger, Crenshaw, AG Paxton. It's not easy to speak up on these issues, and you've done it at personal career risk. Thank you for speaking up for American children. It's time I can't tell you the number of people that said, don't talk about this issue publicly. You can talk about everything else in medicine, but do not ever talk about this on TV or in any public forum. You've probably gotten the same advice. But we're going to keep fighting for American children.
Good morning. I'm Admiral Brian Christine, the Assistant Secretary for Health at the Department of Health and Human Services, and I have the privilege of being the Senior Flag Officer in the Commission Corps of the United States Public Health Service. Welcome to you all, but especially welcome to you, Chloe. Today, We are taking decisive action to protect America's children from chemical and surgical mutilation and to restore evidence-based medicine and gold standard science to the forefront of federal health policy. What we found in our gender dysphoria review was truly alarming. From 2016 to 2019, the number of sex-rejecting procedures performed on children tripled. And despite the mounting evidence of harm and the reversals by European countries, the previous administration and my predecessor were driven by a warped ideology and a radical political agenda. And that is why I am signing this public health message today, to ensure that healthcare providers understand their responsibility to put children's health and safety first. As medical professionals, we have an ethical obligation to provide excellent care to our patients informed by the best evidence we have, and as such, we should refuse interventions that pose risks of unnecessary harm because our first mission is to do no harm. For the safety of our children, medical professionals should refuse to provide puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgical interventions. Instead, we must prioritize comprehensive psychosocial assessment and support. We must address co-occurring mental health conditions, and we must provide compassionate, developmentally appropriate counseling. And finally, we must educate young families about the incredibly weak evidence for these medical interventions. And let me be clear about this. This is not about politics. It is about science. It is about safety. It is about radical transparency. It is about trust. Our mission is to ensure that every American child receives medical care that is evidence-based, that is ethical, and worthy of the public's confidence. For America to be healthy and great again, we need strong, healthy boys and girls who will have the chance to know the joy of coming together as one and starting their own family one day. And if they are subjected to these vile sex-rejecting procedures, that cannot happen. Protecting our children's health and their future is good medicine. Protecting our children's health and their future is our moral obligation. Today, I am offering the opportunity for every medical professional to absolutely reject harmful, irreversible procedures on minors and instead to prioritize medicine that puts the health of America's children first. All of us on this stage will continue to be guided by gold standard science, a dedication to radical transparency, and a commitment to truth. President Trump and Secretary Kennedy will stand for no less. Thank you all for being with us today. God bless President Donald Trump. God bless Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. God bless all of our vulnerable children who suffer from gender dysphoria and their families. God bless Chloe Cole, and God bless our republic. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, the director of the National Institute of Health. I was thinking about how we got to this moment today, and I was thinking about the power of science. And normally, we at the NIH, and I should say, as myself in my own capacity in my career, I've always admired the power of science to do good for the world, to help us understand how the world works, to develop cures and treatments. But today is not a day to just talk about that, because we've also seen in this sorry episode that will go down as a dark episode in medical history of how the power of enthrallment to a false science can damage and harm lives. The hijacking of scientific institutions, the hijacking of scientific journals for the purpose of essentially enforcing groupthink is tremendously powerful. We saw this during the pandemic, and we've seen this in this episode today, that the idea about whether you need to have extraordinary interventions to halt the puberty of a child in order to prevent them from committing suicide. That's a scientific question, right? It's a moral question, lots of types of questions, but it is at heart a scientific question. Is it true? Is it true that if you don't accede to the desires of a 10-year-old, 11-year-old child who thinks they're the other gender, and allow the doctors to do extraordinary measures that they're going to kill themselves. The idea behind all these procedures was a false idea propagated first by science, by scientists, essentially asserting that the evidence that the answer to that question, yes, if you don't let your child transition, they're more likely to commit suicide, that the answer to that question is yes, when in fact there was never any solid scientific evidence for that question. The 300-plus page HHS report, the report that was done in the UK, the CAST report, the Scandinavian reports, all those came and looked at the scientific evidence, and they all came to the same conclusion, that the scientific evidence that the answer to that question is yes is incredibly weak. And so the question is, why did it take so long? Why did it take so long, and how did the first idea come in the heads of people to assert falsely that there was strong scientific evidence to say that you must transition your kid or else they're going to commit suicide? I mean, those are haunting questions for me as the director of the National Institute of Health, because the key idea in science is that when there are extraordinary claims made, you have to question them. Even when you have ideas that are well established, you have to question them. And yet what happened was that there was essentially a groupthink that prevented excellent scientists from speaking up when they should have. The extraordinary courage of the authors of the HHS report, I don't know if you're all here in the room today, is stunning to me, because they stuck their heads up. The extraordinary courage of Chloe Cole, sticking her head up when it was almost impossible to do so. Why was it so impossible? Because the power of science to enthrall minds is almost unmatched in our society. So what do we need to do? First, don't ever let, if you're a parent, don't ever let a doctor tell you, essentially blackmail you into thinking that you must accede to a transition for your child, because if you don't, the child will kill themselves. There's no warrant for that. The scientific evidence does not support that, and we should never, and I'm proud to be part of an administration that is putting an end to that practice. Second, this is the policy announcement. As director of the NIH, we have ended our support for research in support of of gender transitions. But now there have been activist courts that have prevented us from getting rid of all of our portfolio of it. But by the end of this year, that's all going to be gone from our portfolio. It was junk science to begin with, and we will not continue to support it. Let me tell you an anecdote about this. There was a researcher that the NIH funded that did a study of whether, to answer the question, was it more likely that a child who didn't transition would commit suicide? That researcher found the answer was no. But because the researcher's ideology was so enmeshed in this, because if the answer is no, that means she might get canceled, she refused to release the study, refused to release the data. And we at the NIH have got the data from this researcher and made it available for other researchers to do replication studies and work on. I'll tell you, I think to me that is an absolute violation of what it means to be a scientist. When I find data that disagrees with my priors, my ideas about the way the world works, I change my mind. Actually, the easiest way to always be right, when you're wrong, you just change your mind. It's very simple. That's the beautiful thing about science. So I made the announcement already about no longer funding this, but the second announcement, and this is really, really important to me. There are thousands of kids that have undergone this transition, and many of whom regret having undergone this transition. There are thousands of kids that are in mental distress because they've been through this, families torn apart. We are going to fund science to help them, because what I don't want is for the answers to those families to be based on basically no evidence or presumed knowledge that we don't actually have. We're going to do gold standard science to help those families, to help those kids that are detransitioning or thinking about detransitioning, because we have to follow wherever the evidence leads in order to protect children. So Secretary Kennedy, President Trump, if you're listening, and all the distinguished congressmen and senators and others in the room, thank you for your leadership on this issue. Thanks for on the behalf of all the parents and kids of this country. I think we are turning a page in this. This will be remembered as a dark day. Today we'll remember as a bright day, but the episode of the last several years will remember as a dark page in the history of science, and let's pray that we never have to do that again. Thank you.
Men are men. Men can never become women. Women are women. Women can never become men. Children are innocent, and they need our protection. It takes organized efforts to deny these fundamental truths. Sadly, we've seen such efforts succeed from time to time. The denial of fundamental truths can destroy nations from within. At the root of the evils we face, such as the blurring of the lines between sexes and radical social agendas, is a hatred for nature as God designed it, and for life as it was meant to be lived. This ideology does not just deny biology, it declares war against it. As part of the Biden administration's war on nature, this department perverted the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. They pretended that gender dysphoria was a disability to force healthcare providers and programs to mutilate minors. Without the reforms Secretary Kennedy made today, more children would be coerced into life-altering interventions that many will deeply regret. Thankfully, President Trump and Secretary Kennedy are stopping this madness and stopping the war. Through the leadership of Paula Stannard and the Office for Civil Rights, our proposed rule would revise Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act to exclude gender dysphoria not resulting from physical impairments. We are reassuring recipients of HHS funding that policies preventing or limiting sex-rejecting procedures do not violate Section 504's disability non-discrimination requirements. Previous speakers have discussed treatment for pediatric gender dysphoria, review of evidence and best practices, our rigorous study of the medical dangers posed to children from attempts to change their sex. Everyone should read this study. Chloe, thank you for your relentless advocacy to protect children from harm. Body dysmorphia and gender dysmorphia and alienation and social contagion cause a lot of children to suffer. As Jay and Brian said, we are working on approaches and solutions. Today, we are drawing a line to stop these problems from becoming worse. Compassion compels us to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here and to be able to speak on behalf of American children whose innocence and health are being compromised, whose lives are being ripped apart by ideologically driven medical experimentation. I represent a community of people who have been harmed by these procedures and yet largely are ignored by the same doctors, the same clinics and medical system that have harmed us. I've become an advocate for protecting children from what is often mistakenly referred to as gender-affirming care, because it is by no means care, scientific medical abuse that violates every tenet of medical ethics. This ideology is festering at an unimaginable scale within our hospital systems, our culture, our communities, and to many within our own families. For me, it started with being lied to about who I was by adults outside of my family. I was made to feel that the way that God beautifully made me was in fact a mistake that could only be fixed by so-called modern medicine. My doctors, rather than guiding me, they affirmed my childish misgivings about my developing body. My belief that I wasn't just a tomboy, that if I liked having short hair, if I liked being around the boys more, if I behaved more like my older brothers, I actually was a boy who just so happened to be born in a girl's body. At 13 years old, I was administered puberty blockers and testosterone in high doses. And when I was only 15, they removed my breasts. My questions about whether I will be able to have children or about the future of my reproductive health and my overall health have gone unanswered. But that mastectomy ensured that I am never going to be able to nourish whatever children I may have. And this happened before I was even mature enough to understand that one day I would aspire to become a mother. Because of the moral failings of my doctors, I forever have lost significant parts of my identity as a now adult woman while I was still a child. And there are tears that I don't show to the world. There is grief that every single day I carry with me silently. The only thing in the world that makes me angrier is knowing that this is continuing to happen to children all across the United States and throughout the globe. But they messed with the wrong kid. At 16 years old, I rejected the lies that I was sold. I detransitioned, and I chose to face the world and sound the alarm on what is happening to my generation, both in the hopes that this would set forth a movement of young people who chose to break free from ideology, and also that one day, no child would ever have to speak up about this ever again. And what this movement has achieved in such a small amount of time is far greater than I have ever dreamed of. 26 states now have passed laws to save children. Laws that all have been upheld by the Supreme Court earlier this year. President Trump has signed countless executive orders to fight for biological reality, to fight for the protection of our kids. My own lawsuit filed by Center for American Liberty is finally moving forward. And of course, the Department of Health and Human Services has been a decisive part in our wins this first year of Trump's second term. With the release of the peer-reviewed gender dysphoria report, it has become official US policy that these treatments in children are questionable at best, life-shattering at worst. And this industry needs to be challenged and taken down for the sake of future generations. Because there is no such thing as being transgender, nor children born in the wrong bodies. Every boy and every girl deserves to be loved the way that they were beautifully created in their mother's womb. and to the young people out there who are struggling with this mental illness. I want you to know that there is a better way out. And it's not too late to accept the beautiful way that God has created you. My story turned out to be a success story. But it was only in spite of my doctors and the horrible things that they did to me, to my family. I am only one voice out of thousands of children, but our cries for help have finally been heard. And the Trump administration and the HHS and Secretary Kennedy have done an incredible job this year, ensuring that this abuse is going to cease one day. I am incredibly excited to see the many more wins that we are going to have moving forward in the next few years. On behalf of every single child who once was mistaken that they were transgender, thank you for everything.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all the comments today. We're now going to take questions from the press. Please keep your question to the reason we're here today. Also, if you can clearly state your name and your outlet, and if all the speakers want to stand up and be ready to answer questions, and then who you'd like to ask your question to. Sarah?
Hi, Sarah Overmall from CNN. I first wanted to ask just if you have a sense in Medicare and Medicaid how much gender identity care was being funded or paid for, but also all of you mentioned in some capacity mental health care resources. So does this go with more support for mental health care and well-being in children?
Our estimate, we know in 2023 there's $30 million spent. Our estimate is over 10 years. It would have been $250 million at least. We have mental health care services available. Our challenge, as you know, is enough practitioners in mental health care who can deal with these issues.
Alrighty, we've just gotten in some news here. We want to take you to a camera we're getting in from just moments ago.
We are seeing what appears to be a plane.
This is a video from just moments ago from 13 ABC in North Carolina. They're fixing to show some video. We're just getting in of this plane crash at Statesville Regional Airport. This is... You'll have to stick with this here because we're working through everything we've got just in. This is from 13 ABC. I should say 11 ABC in North Carolina. WTVD. Sorry guys, we're working to get all of this news in. Again, this is just moments ago from WTVD there, showing what appears to be a plane crash. We're learning there's been multiple reports of people dead. To kind of bring you where this kind of is, this is near the city of Statesville. The closest larger city is Charlotte. I'll zoom out. I have a map pulled up. Might be able to pull it onto your screen if you guys will hold with me here. The lower third kind of gave away where we were going to go next because we were literally just getting in this news as we spoke. Here we go. Just one moment. You know, we often talk about when you're anchoring and producing at the same time. Here is where we're learning that airport is, and I'll take this out. This is in North Carolina. You'll see Charlotte there at the bottom. I can zoom out any more. It's going to be the northern part of North Carolina there. That video from just moments ago where we're seeing that video just beginning to come in. So we're going to keep our eyes on it. We are learning there is reports of people dead at this moment. If there is some type of press conference, we will take you there. But WBTV in North Carolina says this crash in Airedale County resulted in multiple deaths. That's what the sheriff confirmed. The Cessna C550 plane crashed at Statesville Airport. This happened around 10:15 a.m. on December 18th. It was not exactly known how many people were aboard the plane, nor a picture from the airport showed the plane in a massive ball of flame. I wonder if I'm able to, I can show you guys this photo. This is from WBTV. There you go. That's a screen showing this pretty crazy fire. Again, this is a crash happening at the Statesville Airport in North Carolina. We just wanted to break in with that very quickly here. We'll monitor where that goes. Want to take you back out live now to where we were just seeing a few moments ago. Health and Human Services officials announcing these new federal restrictions, federal funding restrictions for states attempting to allow surgeries, transgender and gender affirming surgeries on young children. Let's listen in.
Who have already been through this.
Michael?
Hi, Mike Emanuel from Fox. Mr. Secretary, I have no doubt taxpayers and many parents are relieved by what you are doing. But do you worry about blue states and transgender activists tying you up in court over the next few years over these steps you're taking today?
I don't worry. I mean, I think that's going to happen. I mean, the number of lawsuits with my name on it right now is almost beyond counting. So we have, we got everything that we do here. We have excellent general counsel. We know what we do, what we're doing is legal. And if people sue us, they're welcome to, but we're going to win the lawsuits. So.
Jonathan? Jonathan Brown?
Hi, Jonathan with the Christian Post. What effects do you believe that these standards will have throughout the world in places where they're also struggling with these issues?
So this department, under President Trump's previous term, launched the Geneva Consensus Declaration, which is a multilateral organization of many other member states that support each other on this issue as well as other social issues. I just had the honor of speaking at the annual meeting of the Geneva Consensus Declaration about 6 weeks ago, and there was a lot of support. As you heard, there's been a lot of reference to scientific studies in other countries here. I think the report we've all talked about today that was published here will be read around the world and translated. So there is a lot of cooperation between many nations.
That's right there.
Hi, Chelsea Sturzo at Stat News. What is the implementation?
Okay, you are continuing to listen in there to Health and Human Services officials taking questions there after making that announcement. We do want to turn to some other news we are following right now. We are continuing to follow the manhunt for the suspect in the Brown University shooting. The search there for that shooter raging on. It's now into day 6. Let's take it to some video we got in. New video yesterday showing the continued zoomed in kind of video of this suspect as they are continuing to search for him entering day 6. Police announcing yesterday in a press conference that they are now looking for a second suspect that was in the proximity, or I should say a person of interest that was in the proximity of the suspect that you are seeing video of. So a lot to know. This search, of course, continuing now into day 6. It is going to be something to monitor today, I'll tell you. They do have a press conference scheduled for later today at about 3 p.m. I'm unclear at this point in time if we're going to be on the air. Likely not. But we will follow it and bring you updates as they come around. Want to turn to our next headline that we're following because it has started pouring rain right here in Brooklyn. Let's take you to a live camera from Arkansas Department of Transportation showing, looks like they're having a little bit of a glitch there, but it should come back. There we go. The camera's back. Sorry, we were just waiting for that little glitch to pass us. Take a look live there. You can see the rain continuing to pour down live there in Brooklyn. We're having some feed troubles, as you might be able to see there. There we go. Possibly because of the rain. It was a little windy this morning. Let's take you to that forecast now. Here we go. It's on your screen right now. High of 61, a low of 30 today. Thunderstorms were expected, and that's what we're seeing right now outside. By Friday and Saturday, the sun's going to peek out once again. A high of 47, a low of 37 on Friday. And Saturday, a high of 61 degrees and a low of 39. That's a look at your forecast right now as we continue to take a look there live in Brooklyn. Thanks and courtesy to RDOT for that camera there as the rain continues to pour down. We are going to sneak in a quick break. More to come when we return. Alrighty, welcome back into Brooklyn News. It is so good to be with you. It is Thursday, December 13th, 2025. I'm Jackson Mitchell. Good to be with you once again. We are continuing to follow, I should say, multiple headlines. First, we want to take you, though, over to the Senate. Actually, before we do that, I want to know, that was our first commercial break. We've been on the air now for an hour and 14 minutes. It shows you we're taking the live events as they happen and breaking situations. But again, just earlier in the Senate, this was this morning. It's still this morning, but earlier in the morning, I should say. Senate Republican leader, Majority Leader, I should say, John Thune, he spoke, as you take a look there at the Senate just before his remarks got underway, on a number of topics. One big thing, health care. Let's turn the audio up and listen in.
Mr. President, as we wrap up, we're about to wrap up, I should say, our legislative work for 2025, I would say it's been quite a busy year here in the United States Senate. The longest session period in 15 years to kick off the year, and historic number of votes, the most literally in half a century. In fact, Mr. President, if you can see on this chart, the number of votes, you go back, the first date on there is 1989. Obviously, this is pretty small, difficult to see, perhaps, unless you're standing right over it. But if you look at the red line here, that's this year. So 653 votes cast so far this year, which dwarfs any year going back to 1989, which is what we had data going back to. We have since researched farther back. Turns out there was one year, 1976. We went back 8 decades. There was one year in 1976 where the Senate cast more votes than we did this year. But if you go back to 1989, the closest one is right here in 1995, which for those of us who were actually following it back then, that was the Contract with America year, and so that was a record number of votes cast in both, I think, the House and the Senate. But we have eclipsed that. There were 613 votes cast in 1995. This year in the United States Senate, we have already cast 653, and we are not quite done yet. So historic, just in terms of the number of votes cast, the number of hours in session, and the number of days in session. Also historic just in terms of the amount of time that we've been around here, Mr. President. So we put in a lot of time here this year. Now, I have always said that you can't equate volume of activity or busyness with productivity. I think you have to, those are sometimes separate metrics. But I would argue, Mr. President, that what really matters here is not the number of votes or the number of hours that we've worked. It is what we accomplished with those hours. And this has been an incredibly productive Senate, and I'm proud to say that we've accomplished a lot this year in the United States Senate. Our flagship bill, I should say, for the year, of course, was the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Working Families Tax Cuts Act, and the largest part of that was, in fact, the tax cuts that were enacted that are going to benefit American families, Mr. President. Back in 2017, the Republicans delivered substantial tax relief for hardworking Americans. But that tax relief was scheduled to expire at the end of this month. And so one of our main priorities for this year was extending that tax relief. And extend it we did. But we didn't just extend it, we made it permanent. And we added to it additional tax relief on top. So now hardworking Americans can enjoy permanently lower rates, plus an increased standard deduction, a further increase in the child tax credit, a new bonus deduction for seniors, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and Mr. President, that list goes on and on. In addition to the new and permanent tax relief for individuals and families, we also made important tax relief for businesses of all sizes to help our growth and expand jobs and opportunities for American workers. So I would just say, again, Mr. President, if you look at that map, this measures, and again, it's too far away for people to see, but the color coding represents the amount of tax relief that people in these individual states or even within a state will receive based upon the filings and what we expect they'll be filing for next year. But if you can see at the top of that, the U.S. average is $3,752 in savings as a result of what we did to prevent what would have been the largest tax increase in American history. And so American families this next year, American businesses, are going to have more money in their pockets as a result of what we did. Had we not taken those actions, the average family across this country would have seen a $3,752 increase in their taxes. And so that's sort of representative of the chart across the country, and the darker ones means you're probably getting more tax relief relative to the lighter colors, but nevertheless, everyone in this country who files a tax return is going to see a much lower tax bill, tax liability this next year as a result of what we did. So that's a lot right there, Mr. President, in and of itself. But the One Big Beautiful Bill didn't end with the working families tax cuts. We also invested in a more secure border and safer streets. We made a historic investment in our national security. And we repealed the Democrats' natural gas tax and took steps to unleash American energy production to ensure that Americans have stable, plentiful, and affordable supply of energy. We took measures to modernize the farm safety net, something very important in my state of South Dakota, to address housing costs, to repair and upgrade our air traffic control system. Now, Mr. President, I could keep going. The working families tax cuts and the rest of the One Big Beautiful Bill accomplished a lot for hardworking Americans. But that's not all that we've done in the Senate this year. The American people elected President Trump last November. And one of our priorities this year has been ensuring that the President has his team in place so that he can do the job the American people elected him to do. And I'm proud to report that by the end of this week, we will have confirmed 417 nominees, far more than were confirmed by this point in either President Trump's first term or in President Biden's term. And it's even more remarkable, Mr. President, again, you can see this in real form here. This was President Trump's first term in office. At the end of his first year, which would be end of 2017, there were 323 of his nominees that had been confirmed. Under President Biden, at the end of the first year, 2021, there were 365 of his nominees who had been confirmed by the United States Senate. And as of today, that number here in 2025, in President Trump's second term, will be 417 nominees. And that is important, Mr. President, because every president needs to have his team in place to do the job that the American people elected him to do. So as we think about, and we look at, discussed on the floor yesterday, you look at the President's first term, what makes this even more remarkable is the fact that there was a historic level of obstruction by the Democrats to getting the President's nominees in place. I'm talking about something unlike anything we've ever seen in American history for any president of any political party. And if you look at his first term, Mr. President, President Trump remains the only president on record not to have had a single civilian nomination confirmed by unanimous consent or voice vote. The only president on record. Democrats have dragged out the process on almost every single one of the president's nominations. Not out of principle, but out of petty partisanship. Any president going back in history, Mr. President, when they get elected, get a mandate from the American people, generally both political parties, and I've been here through multiple administrations, both Republican and Democrat, and I've been here in multiple Congresses and Senates, both Republican and Democrat. And in every case, a lot of, particularly when you get past the cabinet, which we all take very seriously, obviously, and there is a process in place, and some of the changes that we made to expedite nominations didn't affect cabinet-level nominees. But when you get to the sub-cabinet level, in many cases, particularly non-controversial nominees have been approved by unanimous consent or voice vote. It is a way of recognizing that a president needs to get his team in place in order to accomplish the work and the agenda that the American people elected, in this case, President Trump to do. And so what happened this year was historic and unprecedented, because most of those lower-level cabinet nominees are done by unanimous consent. That's just been the practice, that has been the precedent, that has been the tradition, that has been the history of the United States Senate. And for President Trump, the first president in American history. But as I said, Mr. President, we as Republicans haven't let that stop us. And so when we close out this year with a total of 417 nominees, we will have the backlog of nominees essentially cleared. Mr. President, considering nominations is one responsibility of the government. Funding the government, together with the House of Representatives, is another. And one thing that I was determined on when I became leader was to make sure that the Senate went about considering the yearly appropriations bills through regular order, a process that gives senators from both parties the greatest chance to make their voices, and the voices of their constituents, I might add, heard. And we've done a lot to return the Senate to regular order process this year. Appropriations work was unnecessarily delayed by Democrats' decision to shut down the government for 6 weeks. But despite that, we've had multiple individual appropriations bills signed into law, and the Senate is well on its way to passing 5 additional bills. Now, Mr. President, there's a lot more I could talk about when it comes to Senate accomplishments in 2025. We've taken action to repeal a number of burdensome rules and regulations, including the Biden electric vehicle mandate, appliance rules that would have driven up prices for hardworking Americans and businesses, and energy mandates that would have driven up energy prices for American families. We passed the HALT Fentanyl Act to permanently schedule fentanyl analogs as the most deadly type of drugs. We passed the Lake and Riley Act to keep criminal illegal aliens off of our streets. We passed the Genius Act, a landmark bill to create the first U.S. federal framework for stablecoins and ensure U.S. leadership in financial innovation. We passed the Take It Down Act to combat non-consensual, explicit images being shared online. And Mr. President, so much more that I could talk about. And we even tried to do things that ultimately were blocked by Democrats, like legislation that would prevent biological males from hijacking opportunities for women and girls in sports. I guess my point, Mr. President, has been a long and a challenging year here in the United States Senate. And I thank all of my colleagues, both Republican and Democrat, and all the staffs, including the folks here on the floor, who put in long days and long hours in this last year. And I think, Mr. President, as I said, there is a lot to show for it. In fact, if I put up this last chart, you'll have a hard time. Nobody's going to be able to read this for sure, but I do this only simply to illustrate. This is the list of things that we have accomplished in this last year. And it runs the gamut from all the things, some of which I just mentioned, a lot of which I didn't mention, that were included in the Working Families Tax Cuts, the One Big Beautiful Bill that passed last summer, but then so many other things on this list that were accomplished as a result of the good work that we have done on behalf of the American people here in this last year. So, Mr. President, it is, I think, an example of what we all came here to do. And thanks to our work this year, Americans are going to be looking at 1, safer streets, 2, more money in their pockets, and 3, new opportunities to get ahead, and new opportunities on the way for American people and American families. And so, Mr. President, we're going to keep advancing those priorities here in the United States Senate in 2026 and build on the record of accomplishment and the successes that we have had here in 2025. Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I suggest the absence of a quorum. Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsobrooks.
All righty, a look at earlier this morning when Senate Majority Leader John Thune, the Republican of South Dakota, addressed members there. Stand by here because we're now going to go to the House floor. They've been speaking. They've been really having some morning debate all morning. So let's take you there now. Here we go. This is the House floor. We'll go live there and listen in here in just a moment. I do want to go right, though, to this live feed that we are getting in from WJZY in North Carolina, in Statesville, North Carolina. We're waiting on an update on that plane crash we brought you in just a few moments ago. So in the meantime, we're going to listen to the House floor. As soon as that update comes, we will take you there live.
Paying for it. University studies show that the annual cost of the wolf to the cattle business as of a few years ago is estimated to be $128 million. That's each year. This number far higher now that cattle prices are higher. Many think the only cost of the wolf is the killing of the livestock. But the impact of the primal fear and terror cattle understandably feel when a wolf is near has dramatic and serious impacts on weight gain and on pregnancy rates. These losses in production are real and they are serious. In a time when even the president is concerned about beef prices, these losses affect everyone by causing a reduction in the size of America's cattle herd and, of course, their productivity. In recognition of this damage caused by the wolf, laws have been enacted some in the Big Beautiful Bill and some at the state level to try to bring at least some ESA reimbursement equity into play by providing some payment to the owners for the death of cattle caused by wolves. But these programs come nowhere close to offsetting the very real loss. And I can assure you, the rancher would be absolutely happier if he or she could completely avoid these losses that lead to asking for justice under these programs. If we are to properly and fairly and logically manage the wolf, we must pass Congresswoman Boebert's and Tom Tiffany's bill, H.R. 845, the Pet and Livestock Protection Act. This bill would federally delist the wolf and allow states to actually manage wolf populations, not exterminate, manage. And if we are to properly allocate responsibility for the monetary cost of the wolf, that is, for the cost of the Endangered Species Act, America itself must pay for the consequences of this law, and this means Congress must manage the problem and then appropriate dollars to pay for it. Let's begin by passing this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yield back.
Reserve. The gentleman from Arkansas reserves. The gentlelady from Oregon is recognized.
I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Arkansas.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crane.
The gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the Pet and Livestock Protection Act, which I'm a co-sponsor of, led by my friends Representative Boebert and Representative Tiffany. The truth is, Congress should not have to step in to delist the gray wolf here, but here we are. That's because the Endangered Species Act listing process no longer works as it was intended to do. The gray wolf has exceeded recovery goals, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, under both Republican and Democrat administrations, has repeatedly concluded that the species should be delisted. Yet every time, radical groups, litigious groups, step in to block that decision. They ignore science, they ignore facts, and they ignore the law. They don't want recovery, they want permanent federal control. And meanwhile, wolves are wreaking unchecked havoc on ranchers, on farmers, on wildlife, and on rural communities who are paying the price. In the state of Wyoming, since they reintroduced the wolf, their moose population has decreased by 80%. So why are we choosing wolves over moose in the state of Wyoming? I spend more time in wolf country than probably many of the members on this House floor. The elk populations are being decimated. They're starved. They are, I hear my colleagues on the other side talking about in 4 days they killed 30 wolves. You know what? That's called wildlife management. You can do that. You know, when you have a hunting season for deer and you set a goal.
All right, we are seeing an update on that deadly plane collision in North Carolina. Let's go live there and listen in.
David Only, Police Chief for Statesville.
When you step up, could you please just say your name again just for
Absolutely.
And I'm going to introduce them. Thank you. Yep.
All right, my name is April Nesbitt. I am the Public Information Officer for the City of Statesville. We're going to provide a short briefing of the incident that happened this morning. At the end of this briefing, we will not be taking any questions. Just want to give you the heads up on that. So I'm going to introduce you to Ron Smith, City Manager for the City of Statesville.
Good morning. My name is Ron Smith. I'm the City Manager in Statesville. To my left is John Ferguson, our Airport Director. Jody Smyer, he's with Iredell County Emergency Management. Chief David Only, Police Chief, and Chief Glenn Curfew is our Fire Chief. So we don't have a lot to share this morning, as this is still an active event, but I just wanted to let you know that the city did respond to a crash here at the airport this morning at about 10:15. It's been a multi-agency response. We've had city, county, state, feds are here, so we have had, again, everybody is here on site at this point, and we anticipate that this is going to go on for quite some time. Since we don't have a lot of information to share today, and since this is evolving, either the city or other agencies will take the lead in putting out more information as the day goes on. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Ferguson, our Airport Director.
Thank you. Good morning. Like we said, approximately 10:15 a.m., we got a report of a corporate jet that crashed off the end of the runway on the east end. When actually I came out, it was already fully involved. We've had multiple agencies, as we said, come. The FAA arrived about 12 o'clock today. They're taking over the scene. They're taking over the investigation. We have no information on any cause. The airport now is closed until further notice. It'll take some time to get the debris off the runway to get it safe again. At this time, I'm also still don't have any other information than what we've already said. turn this over to, oh, you go ahead, you do it.
Again, we'll provide updates as soon as we have them. It'll either be us or other agencies. And if you have direct questions that you want answered, you can email those to me, and we will try to get these back to you as soon as possible. Again, my name is April Nesbitt. It's ANESBIT at statesvillenc.net. Thank you all.
No number of people on the plane or anything?
It happened during landing. Alrighty, a quick and brief press conference there from just moments ago in Statesville, North Carolina. Officials providing an update on a deadly plane collision that occurred. We actually have video of the fire that it caused after the fact. Let's play it out for you. Here is that video. This is from ABC 13 there. Keep saying 13, it's ABC 11, as you are taking a look there at that video. Maybe we'll actually rewind the video just a little bit here so you can see the fire that it caused. There you go, there's a rewind on that video showing the fire that it caused. This is a feed that we got from earlier today. From WTVD there in North Carolina. So that's a look at that deadly plane collision. We're learning that people have died that were aboard that plane. It's unclear how many, though. In that press conference they just provided within the last few moments, they did not provide an exact update. So we'll wait to see what happens here. Trust, we will keep our eyes on what happens there, and if we get any updates, we'll take you to it first right here on Brookland News. We are going to sneak in a quick break here. More to come right here on Brookland News Live. Welcome back into Brookland News Live here. We're still following a lot of headlines. Earlier today, some new video released by the president announcing his plans, what's going to happen for America's 250th birthday. Take a look.
Campaign for president, I pledge to give America the most spectacular birthday party the world has ever seen for America's 250th anniversary on July 4th next year. Already we've had big celebrations to commemorate the 250th birthdays of the Army, the Navy, and the United States Marines, but there is much, much more to come. We're going to have a good time. As we ring in 2026, Americans across the nation will see the iconic Washington Monument illuminated with festive birthday lights to honor the start of this historic anniversary year. Then from June 25th to July 10th of next year, we will host the Great American State Fair on the National Mall, featuring pavilions from all 50 states, highlighting breathtaking innovations and celebrating America's exceptional history and culture. Frankly, you'll never see anything like it, and you'll never see anything like it again. In the fall, we will host the first ever Patriot Games, an unprecedented 4-day athletic event featuring the greatest high school athletes, one young man and one young woman from each state and territory. But I promise there will be no men playing in women's sports. You're not going to see that. You'll see everything but that. As I first announced in 2020, we will build the National Garden of American Heroes featuring statues of all-time greatest Americans, and we will build a triumphal arc as we celebrate 250 years of American freedom. We are the only major city, we are major capital. We are the only major place without a triumphal arc, a beautiful triumphal arc, one like in Paris, where they have the a beautiful arc in Paris. They call it the Arc de Triomphe. And we're going to have one in Washington, D.C. very soon. Construction will start in the very near future. And next spring, a major prayer event on the National Mall to rededicate our country as one nation under God. We're not changing that. There are a lot of people who would like to see it. It'll never happen. And on Flag Day, we will have a one-of-a-kind UFC event here at the White House. It'll be the greatest champion fighters in the world, all fighting that same night. The great Dana White is hosting, and it's going to be something special. But all of this is just a beginning. 2026 will be a celebration of America like no other, honoring our nation in all of its glory. To help carry out these exciting plans, we have created a new public-private partnership. It's called Freedom 250. Working with states, companies, and organizations across the country, we will renew the patriotism, pride, and pioneering spirit of America and lay the groundwork for 50 years of independence and freedom. This will be a time like you've never had in your lives. America 250. Thank you. I love you all.
President Donald Trump, they're announcing the plans for the future of what America's 250th birthday looks like. We are going to go back out to the House of Representatives. They are continuing to debate legislation over on the House floor. Let's listen back in.
Enhanced premium tax credits expire on January 1st. The Republican inaction is driving up healthcare costs for more than 20 million Americans who are facing double, triple, or even quadruple premium increases. So, Mr. Speaker, Republicans can't distract from this cruelty. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this bill. I also call on Speaker Johnson to immediately bring up the Jeffries discharge petition that now has the support of a majority of House members, and that would extend the ACA premium tax credits for 3 years. A majority of this House, Democrat and Republican, wants to act to extend these tax credits. It's time, Speaker Johnson, to bring that bill to the floor. And I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will yield 2 minutes to my good friend from Illinois, Representative Miller.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong support of H.R. 498, the Do No Harm in Medicaid Act. Medicaid was designed as a safety net to be used only by U.S. citizens when they fall into hard times and need medical support. It was never intended to bankroll irreversible, gender-mutilating surgeries on vulnerable children. Yet today, this program is being exploited by the far left, preying on young children to advance their radical trans agenda. Adolescence is a vulnerable time for boys and girls. They are growing into the young men and women that God intended them to be. What these children really need is love and wise counsel, not taxpayer-funded, permanent chemical sterilization, mutilating surgeries, or activists profiting from their confusion. The most egregious actor is none other than Planned Parenthood, the leading abortion provider in the nation, and now the leading provider of these dangerous procedures. The Do No Harm in Medicaid Act shields innocent children from predatory companies and stops Medicaid from weaponizing against our next generation. The federal government has no business paying for the destruction of children's bodies, and the American people should never be complicit in it. Thank you to my colleagues for leading this bill, and I urge all to vote yes. Thank you, and I yield back.
Reserve.
The gentleman from Kentucky reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2 minutes now to the gentleman from California, Mr. Takano, who is the chair of the Congressional Equality Caucus.
The gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to this hateful legislation. The so-called Do No Harm in Medicaid Act prohibits Medicaid from spending funds on medically necessary care, like puberty blockers and gender-affirming hormone treatments for transgender individuals under 18. This is Congress seeking to ban health care for the most vulnerable among us. Republicans are working to ban parents from providing their trans children on Medicaid with necessary health care. These types of decisions should be made between families and their physicians. Yet, here we are, having politicians in Washington, D.C. telling parents across America that they know how to raise their trans youth. Transgender people need consistent access to essential and medically necessary care like everyone else. And this care makes possible for transgender people to live safely and authentically as themselves. I've spoken with countless families.
Alrighty, I know we were just getting into that, but we do have some breaking news just coming into us. We are learning the names of those officers involved in that off-duty incident. The Jonesboro Police Department is releasing those names. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to be looking at my phone to look at this statement that we're just getting in. If you remember, just to bring in some context here, these two officers were driving in Jonesboro when, according to Jonesboro Police Department, a shooting occurred with one of their guns. We had the original statement. It says shortly before 1 p.m. This is on the 15th of December, so just a few days ago, earlier this week. First responders were called to the area of Redwood Boulevard in Stallings Lane for a reported accidental shooting. The incident involved two off-duty JPD officers who were traveling together. The victim was transported to an area hospital for further statement. It did say the ASP, which is the Arkansas State Police, is investigating. So that's the original statement. Now we're getting the names of these officers. A police report released Thursday said that Brandon Meeker, 25, shot Samuel Rogers, 22. It says, while the report said Rogers did not suffer any injuries, the Jonesboro Police Department said Rogers suffered a gunshot wound and was taken to a local hospital for further treatment. So, the incident report also stated that both men lived at the Jonesboro Police Department. Interesting here. So no, I mean, we have the names of these officers, but according to the report that I'm just now getting, and I'm literally reading it to you guys off my phone here, there is no new details showing maybe what occurred here, what the story is, what do we know. So no new details there. All we do know is again that these two JPD officers were involved in an off-duty accident. These two off-duty JPD officers were traveling together and were involved in an accidental shooting. Their names now released. I'll say it one more time here. Brandon Meeker, who's 25, he's said to have shot Samuel Rogers, who's 22. That's according to this police report released and an article from KAIT, the local news station here in Jonesboro. So we'll continue to monitor this story when new things come about here. We will keep you updated with that. In the meantime, I want to take you back out to House lawmakers who are continuing to debate legislation on the chamber floor. Let's listen back in.
Subject the patient to unnecessary and dangerous medical treatments. When it comes to gender transition interventions, puberty blockers, hormones like testosterone and estrogen, and surgical procedures, the evidence shows that this is the wrong approach to getting these kids the help they need. The most comprehensive and authoritative review of these practices was conducted in the United Kingdom by Dr. Hilary Cass. Her 2024 Cass review concluded that the scientific evidence supporting such interventions is remarkably weak. There is no strong long-term evidence showing that puberty blockers and transgender surgeries improve long-term mental or physical health outcomes for minors, nor is there robust data on their safety or impact on development. In the United States, the Department of Health and Human Services last month released a peer-reviewed report titled Treatment for Pediatric Gender Dysphoria, Review of Evidence and Best Practices. This study concluded that harms from treatments, including these puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries, are significant, long-term, and frequently under-recognized in clinical research. The evidence for these interventions in minors is weak and insufficiently tracked, particularly for outcomes like fertility, psychological well-being, and quality of life.
Gentleman's recognized for an additional 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to have protected the children of Utah and commend the 25 other states that have stood up for their kids as well. I urge all my colleagues to follow the scientific evidence and stop funding these horrific procedures on kids. I yield back.
Gentleman from Kentucky reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2 minutes now to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Tonko, who's the ranking member of our Environment Subcommittee.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from New Jersey for yielding. This bill is the latest in a long line of cruel and calculated Republican actions to erase and endanger LGBTQ plus people, especially trans youth, by using fear as a political weapon. But let's be clear. Kids trying to live authentically are not a threat. Families seeking care are not political pawns. And the providers committed to their oath to do no harm are no extremists. Every major U.S. medical group agrees health care for trans youth is safe, effective, and necessary. This care can reduce anxiety, it can reduce depression and suicide risk, and help young people thrive. If any other treatment lowered suicidal ideation at the same rate, we'd call it a miracle. The ability is that we have an opportunity here to help our kids live as their true and healthy selves, and that is a miracle. Yet instead of celebrating or expanding access to life-saving care, we're debating a bill that would prevent families from getting their children the care they need. It is frankly embarrassing. Politicians should not be telling.
Alrighty, that is going to do it for us today as we've been continuing to watch a number of feeds. I'm Jackson Mitchell. It's been a pleasure to be with you. That wraps up our coverage for the day, though, as we've continued to watch the weather here in Brookland, the Senate chamber, all of that. We'll leave you on this shot of Brookland here. Thanks for watching, guys.